ultra wideband. It's everywhere. And I'm going to show you tonight just how extensively deployed this technology is. And then we're going to go through imaging today. And then we're going to start getting into some of the more proactive or offensive applications of ultra wideband. So I hope you find this useful. I know that Apple and Google and Facebook and Twitter, and I hope that they realize that what they're doing is not nice. I know they find this technology useful because it has everything to do with surveillance, and it has everything to do with the potential manipulation of what's going on around you and even you. So we're on episode 103. Notes just went out in DLive. I'll send them out periodically if I remember. We're going to rewatch this video that we watched a couple days ago to kind of set the table. And then we're going to look at some international literature, documentation that kind of sets the standards and expectations for wideband. And then we're going to get back into watching some more videos. And I'm going to show you exactly what this stuff is doing around you from a commercial perspective. So we're going to see a little bit of the medical, and we're going to see a lot of the commercial aspects of it. They're selling it as cute, fluffy, useful, and awesome. But we're going to look at all aspects. So here we go.
Hello, I'm John Chang. Today I will be describing to you some medical device development efforts using the micropower ultra-wideband impulse radar. Our goal is to build medical sensing capabilities to enable better trauma and critical care in austere and definitive care environments. MIR is a technology derived from the National Ignition Facility's predecessor with a large patent portfolio. It is an electromagnetic sensor that sends out pulses and looks for reflected echo signals. It's used for motion detection, localization, and imaging. This diagram, this figure, shows the form factors, which is on the size of a matchbox. This is in contrast to typical laboratory environments, which there are racks of equipment that's necessary to produce these type of sensing. The MIR sensor technology provides multiple capabilities for medical applications. In this view graph, we have a series of different modalities in which the sensors suite could be used. We could use it to track people through barriers, through walls. We could use it to image the individual, a whole body imaging tool. And we could use it to diagnose very sensitive and in high resolution vital signs. For application spaces, it's very conducive for difficult to access environments, such as search and rescue environments, out of hospital care, in combat casualty care, and for first responders, for law enforcement as an example. Remote vital sign sensing has been demonstrated to collapse structures. We've taken this technology and showed that various types of motion sensing measurements can be made through rubble piles, such as when we took this device to the disaster city mock scenario environment. In this view graph, what you see is a series of images that describe how the radar is in place, as indicated by the red circles, and where the subjects are placed, as described by the green circles. On the right hand of this view graph, you see the raw signals coming out of these type of radar technologies. And with minimum amount of signal processing, you could easily describe a breathing signal out of this. The MIR life sign detectors have been deployed and proven at major disasters. We've taken this technology suite to help the first responders in looking for trapped subjects at the World Trade Center in 2001, and then once again in 2005 as a result of Hurricane Katrina. In this view graph set, there's examples of how these devices are being used. The MIR stethoscope provides a unique non-invasive, non-contact, remote sensing vital signs monitor. Because of the high resolution capabilities, we've been able to correlate these type of radar signals with medical gold standards, such as the EKG and pulse oximetry. This example shows some of the results of that effort. The MIR brain scanner can provide a compact, field-capable diagnostic tool for traumatic head injury detection and monitoring. In this case, a big problem in emergency in-field care is the ability to detect bleeding within the brain as a result of a head injury. This view graph set gives you an impression of the type of signals we are looking for and correlating it to the gold standards, once again, of the CT scans and MRI. The MIR voice sensor can improve voice recognition and monitor voice-related illnesses. This is an ongoing effort over the past 10 years to develop a non-invasive, non-contacting way of detecting the voice production mechanisms.
So we've got heartbeat, heart rate, we've got breathing rate, we've got really high resolution brain scanning, and we have voice recognition, speech recognition with ultra wideband impulse radar. They are the same for all intents and purposes. So basic. This is coming from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, who hold the patents for the real tangible, deployable impulse radar platforms. There are many people who have this technology and are now monetizing it, but they're the ones that quote unquote made it, even though it was built for the military and deployed with the military. The stuff that we're focused on at this point, they really have the earlier patents for this technology, and we're going to look at some of those as time goes on.
Because of its compact size and low size, weight, and power, it has potential opportunities in being used in a non-intrusive way for people to wear continuously. As a success story, the MIR pneumothorax detector has been successfully transitioning into a clinical product. This view graph gives you a sense of the description of the problem, which is a punctured lung phenomenon that is often life-threatening, and the summary of the clinical studies that we've done to date with high efficacy. So finally, MIR technology is a safe device. It's suitable for human use because of its low power. It's many times less than the cell phone power that's emitted. It's non-ionizing radiation, and this is in contrast to X-rays, for example. It is non-invasive and doesn't require skin contact. Because of this, it's suitable for use in remote locations, difficult terrains. It is portable, it is battery operated, and it is very cost effective. On the right, you will see some of the nominal specifications describing this technology. So in summary, MIR is leading the way to new medical diagnostic capabilities. It can perform multiple functions such as sensing, localization, and imaging. And its great advantages are its small size, low power, high resolution, and it's non-hazardous to humans. For more information, you could contact the Industrial Partnership Office at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Thank you, and this is John Chang.
So, link recommendations, ITUR, characteristics of ultra-wideband technology. It gets into a lot of stuff. Characteristics of ultra-wideband. This is the ITU. If you want to know what the ITU is, International Telecommunications Union. This is global. ITU. We'll look at Wikipedia, even though, you know, a lot of people discredit it. This is not really something that we're really trying to dig into too awful much. International Telecommunication Union, specialized agency of the United Nations, responsible for all matters related to information and communication technologies. So this is the hub, right? The ITU promotes the shared global use of radio spectrum, facilitates international cooperation in assigning satellite orbits, assists in developing and coordinating worldwide technical standards like 802.11 and all the others, and works to improve telecommunications infrastructure in the developing world. It's also active in the areas of broadband internet, wireless technologies, aeronautical and maritime navigation, radio astronomy, satellite-based meteorology, TV broadcasting, and next generation networks. It's based in Geneva, Switzerland. Global membership includes 193 countries and around 900 businesses, academic institutions, and international regional organizations. So this is what they have to say about ultra wideband. So it says the intentional transmissions from devices using ultra wideband technology may extend over a very large frequency range. Now this conflicts with standard television, radio, cell tower, satellite, vehicle communication type technologies, right? But all of them have to share. And so the difference really with wideband is that they restrict the power output, and that allows it to kind of function in the proverbial background because it doesn't have enough power once it's put out there in the environment past, a few dozen meters. And then it basically other signals, it doesn't really interfere. And so what they create is local proximity, little mini bubbles, little proximity bubbles, or another way to look at it is real short range projection. So think of it like a pistol instead of a rifle, instead of like a heavy caliber hunting rifle, right? They all have different ranges. The ultra wideband is likened to like a pistol, right? It's just very, very short distance, and then it's really not that effective at long distance. That's the best way to probably describe this thing. So they're saying in here that ultra wideband technology may be integrated into many applications such as short range indoor and outdoor communications, radar imaging, medical imaging, asset tracking, surveillance, vehicular radar, and intelligent transportation. So what do you see there? What I see there is fourth industrial revolution, Internet of Things, automated vehicles, and telemedicine, which is medicine over the internet. It's all right there. This technology, ultra wideband, is a critical piece of all of those things. All of it. That's why it's so important. And that's why it's coming out on all of your phones, and why they're going to authorize it for mass use with the newer networks. And on and on and on. It may be difficult to distinguish ultra-wideband transmissions from emissions or unintentional radiations in equipment that also contain other technologies where different limits may apply. So this is where wideband actually has benefits and drawbacks. The benefit is it provides really secure communication because it's local. It doesn't go very far, and it's under the proverbial radar. Applications using ultra-wideband technology may benefit sectors such as public protection, construction, engineering, science, medical, consumer applications, information technology, multimedia, entertainment, and transportation. Devices using ultra-wideband for certain applications may result in their high-density deployment in some environments where stations of radio communication services have already been or will be deployed. So more transmitters. The spectrum requirements and operational restrictions for devices using ultra-wideband technology may vary according to their application. Now, stay with me here. We need to go through this before we get to the cute, fluffy, fun, and fuzzy commercial version of why this means so much to you and why you've got to have it, because it's going to make your life so much better. We're getting there. Devices that use ultra-wideband technology normally operate on a non-protected, non-interference basis. All right, so we are going to move through this ultra-wideband technology for short-range radio communications involving intentional generation and transmission, meaningful transmission of radio frequency energy, RF energy, that spreads out over a large frequency range, which is different than your standard cell phone or the legacy cell phone systems. The newer systems are going to use this technology. We looked at that on the last show. 5G, Verizon ultra wideband, AT&T, T-Mobile, they all have it. They're all going to use it. It's a big deal. especially when we start looking at things like wave interference and being able to make and create new frequencies by steering 2, 3, 4 different beams of energy into each other at a particular location in time and space. You can do some very interesting things with radiation when you do that, and we will look at that as time goes on. That's also on Human Internet if you want to go there and look at directed energy weapons, directed energy systems. So wideband, short-range communication, intentional generation of RF energy over a large frequency range, which may overlap several frequency bands allocated to radio communication services. Devices using ultra-wideband technology typically have intentional radiation from the antenna with either a neg 10 dB bandwidth of at least 500 megahertz. So you have to have, what you're saying is at least 500 megahertz, right? Or a neg 10 dB fractional bandwidth greater than 20%. So you can have a bandwidth, and it doesn't even have to be a large bandwidth, but if you're allocating 20% of the bandwidth available, they consider that ultra-wideband, even though it's not necessarily as effective or efficient as 500 megahertz or even a larger bandwidth than 500 megahertz. And you think 500 megahertz, wow, that's a lot. Well, okay, if you're dealing with, radio stations or television broadcasts, yeah, 500 megahertz is a lot. But when you start dealing with the millimeter wave frequencies at 24 gigahertz, 500 megahertz is not a lot, especially if you have the entire 24 gigahertz, 24.01 to 24.99 gigahertz. And 500 megahertz isn't really that big a deal. And if you have more than 1 gigahertz allocation, then wideband isn't even a smaller problem. And I'm talking about commercial cell networks. We're not talking about what's in your phone. What's in your phone, for example, the Google Soli, their chip in their patents discuss being able to go from 1 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz. And we're talking about 500 megahertz, which is one half of 1 gigahertz. And so something like your phone is going to be able to project a minimum of 500 megahertz at a time effortlessly within basically any range that's legal. And wideband at this point has been allocated between 3.1 gigahertz and approximately 10 gigahertz. But if the transmitters in the phones can go from 1 gigahertz to 300, as it states in the Google patents, which I can show you, then really what's stopping them? What's stopping them? I'll show you right here real quick, and then we'll get back to reading this thing. And it says right here, microwave radio element, radar-based biometric recognition. Radar-based biometric recognition. Microwave radio elements can be configured to emit microwave radiation at 57 to 63 gigahertz. We'll look at this range because a company by the name of Infineon has worked with Google, to make this available for their Google Soli. It says, or this radio element can transmit as broadly as 1 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz to provide a radar field. The ability to receive reflections from human tissue at particular resolutions, for example, about 2 to about 25 millimeters. Resolution of 2 millimeters. What does that look like? Well, I'll show you in a little while. Let's go back over to here. So the activity factor, a fraction of time during which the device using ultra-wideband technology is transmitting. So this is a chirp. It's a pulse, on, off, on, off, on, off. And it's done in the nanosecond timeline. And we'll look at why that's important in a little while. I read a document today that discussed chirping in the nanosecond to the millisecond in order to thermally excite tissue, but not heat it up too much to violate the FCC type stuff, the specific absorption rate limitations and or to damage the tissue. But you can pulse radiation into tissue and thermally expand it and generate ultrasound. Yeah. And when you do that, you can start imaging in much higher resolution, in addition to just using the dielectric properties of tissue, where you're measuring the electrical impedance and electrical conductivity, putting it through an algorithm and understanding where the start and stop locations are when you transition from bone to tissue to muscle to fat, that kind of stuff, which ultra wideband can do, and I'll show you here in a little bit. And this stuff is in your pocket, folks. It's already in your pocket. Through the wall radar imaging device. Okay. So we already learned about that. Listening to the last guy talk. Location sensing and tracking, measurement device, communication device, multifunctional device, multiple ultra wideband applications such as radar imaging, vehicle radar, location sensing, tracking, communication functions using a common platform, which means that this radar chip, ultra wideband functionality, that we're gonna look at the commercial applications of it, which can show you how cool this stuff is. Just know it's a multifunctional, multi-purpose chipset, multifunctional platform that is now going into every single device coming on the market, up to and including sensors in your headrest. And when we get to that point, maybe we'll pull up the Freer Logic patent that discusses no contact brainwave sensing to extract things like, how awake you are, how asleep you are, if you're angry, if you're sad, if you're happy, if you're distracted, if you're focused, up to and including extracting your thoughts out of these things that are going to be implanted in the headrest of your car under the guise of safety. And if you don't believe me, just look up, no contact, body-based brainwave recognition. And let's digress one more time. I'll show you. So here's the dual EEG no contact monitor with personal EEG monitor for concurrent brain monitoring, right? So this is Freer Logic's patent. This is the most evolved patent in this patent family. And if we search for Freer, we're probably going to get, so this is where they can pull it out of basically pull it off your body. Show you a picture here. So they can pull your brain waves off of your body, right? Using capacitive or contact electrodes and or an antenna. This looks remarkably similar to something like a watch, right? Oh, here's the one that looks like a watch. And if we search in here, let's do no contact biopotential sensors. Okay. So it says here that this device can function with a no contact biopotential sensor. This is the one I'm looking for, I believe, to show you what's going to go in a car or somewhere else. And yeah, this is it right here. So here's a seat rest, and these no contact sensors, which we'll look at some today. These no contact sensors emit frequencies that are going to be able to evaluate your brain electrical activity. This is the power of this technology that's coming online today. Multifunctional devices that enable things like radar and up to and including messing with your brain. Stay tuned. May not get there this episode, but upcoming very shortly, I'll show you what I mean. So high data rate, high density use, which means you can repeat the transmission of ultra wideband. My phone, your phone, someone else's phone. We could all be in the same place, like a restaurant, and each one of them has their own little section, and they all talk to each other because they have what they call device-to-device communication, where they can actually coordinate. And they can coordinate the handoff of data, and that's a critical piece of 5G. They're going to offload the network load by dumping data onto a stranger's phone for your phone, and then use something like ultra wideband to get it from that stranger's phone over to your phone. And it might hop 2, 3, or 4 different phones to get to you. But the speeds are so fast with the technology like ultra wideband that they'll just go ahead and use X number of people's phones and the power that their phones need to send and receive this communication. You will be paying for that. Someone else will be paying for your data to be sent off the commercial network through many people's devices, through what they call device-to-device communication, to your phone. Or you will pay for someone else's information to be transmitted to them. And then the cell companies will get kickbacks for going green because they will reduce their energy consumption, offloading it to you, because you will then have to charge your phone when in the background, your phone is surging and pulsing energy out there to move data around the network for other functions. Anyway, I'm digressing. That's a very real thing. You can look this up, device-to-device communication. Well, we'll get there as well. I have a couple documents on that when we start talking about smart cities and smart connectivity and all that. High data rate, secure communications, right? Ultra wideband signals are potentially more covert and potentially harder to detect than non-ultra wideband radio comms. This is because ultra wideband signals occupy a large bandwidth, can be made noise-like, so they sound like background scatter, background noise, look like that on pickup antennas, and can communicate with a unique randomizing timing code at millions of bits per second. Each bit is typically represented by a large number of pulses. Pulse radiation. Look up what pulse radiation does. It's a very interesting rabbit hole to go down. A very low amplitude, typically below the noise level. These features result in secure transmissions with a low probability of detection and a low probability of interception. They are robust. Power spectrum. They say it's low power. It's low power per frequency that's being transmitted, but you get to add the power up. So if you're transmitting 500 megahertz, 500 million hertz, each hertz, 1 hertz, 2 hertz, 3 hertz, 4 hertz, up to 500 million, each one of them is transmitted at very low power. But that accumulates. It just accumulates in a very small pocket. So there's a lot more going on than, just, hey, it's cool and it's non-ionizing and it's not going to hurt you. Pulse shaping, very big deal. Pulse shaping. When we start looking at nervous system manipulation, pulse shaping has everything to do with whether or not the nervous system understands, recognizes, and or compensates for electric fields, magnetic fields, pulse radiation moving into the nervous system and causing some effect. Pulse shaping is a way to get around the nervous system. It's also a way to, read it, enables the control of the frequency content of the ultra wideband transmission, which can reduce interference into radio communication systems. It is fundamental that pulse shapes for ultra wideband communications must have a zero mean because an antenna cannot radiate a signal at a zero frequency. Creative designs of pulse shapes, and a variety of modulation options can be incorporated in the ultra-wideband communication systems design. What does that mean? Well, that means that they can make some really creative waveforms with ultra-wideband. And what you can see here is that there are a variety of ways to modulate ultra-wideband. And you could look up modulation in Wikipedia and look at all of these things, and they tell you what they are here. And they break it down. We're not going to go through it all. I encourage you to start looking at it if this stuff interests you, because pulse radiation is not all created equal. Pulse radiation is very, very different than continuous wave radiation. And like the Google chips, for example, they can do pulse radiation, they can do continuous wave, they could do many different things. Biphase modulation, pulse amplitude modulation, on-off keying modulation, chirp modulated. If it sounds foreign to you, fair enough. If I encourage you to start learning about it, because we are going to get into QAM, quadrature amplitude modulation, and orthogonal frequency division multiplexing when we start looking at the commercial 5G networks, because that technology is how ones and zeros get moved around the internet. And those technologies coincide with doing things like having extremely high frequency radiation go in and change your mood and manipulate your nervous system. And we looked at that patent briefly in episode 101. That was 2 episodes ago. And I'll show you again here in a minute what that looks like. Time division multiplexing, crossband, flexible multiple access, blah, 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 blah. So imaging and location capabilities. Ultra-wideband transmissions can penetrate walls and obstacles and provide high accuracy location. These properties can also be useful in applications to detect the movement of persons and objects. For example, radar imaging applications can be used by law enforcement, rescue, fire organizations to detect persons hidden behind walls or under debris. Wow. This is on your nightstand, and your nightstand is, 1 wall away from your bathroom, or your phone's in the other room and it's 1 wall away from your bed in your bedroom. Radar imaging applications to look through walls and debris and rubble. Situations such as hostage rescues, fires, collapsed buildings, avalanches, taking a shit, having sex. Ultra-wideband can be used at hospitals and clinics for a variety of medical applications to obtain images of organs. So images of organs, got it, within the body of a person or an animal. Ultra-wideband can be used in applications. Locate objects such as mineral deposits, metallic or non-metallic pipes, electrical cables, plastic landmines. Measures ice thickness. That's interesting. Forensic and archaeological studies, right? Find flaws in bridges and highways. Radar imaging, GPR, ground penetrating radar, in-wall radar imaging, through-wall radar imaging. This would be the one I'd be worried about, especially when I show you some of the images they can make with like 30 gigahertz and 50 gigahertz radiation. Yeah, they know what you look like. They know every line and curve. Every line and curve. They know. They know. Medical imaging, right? Surveillance, vehicle radar, location and sensing tracking, communication. Right. So we're moving down the bench here. And I think we're going to proceed forward with our discussion. Ground penetrating radar. Yeah, it gets into all this stuff. This is a really interesting document because this lines out at a high level what it is and what they project it being used for. And talks about its use in vehicle radar. I know I'm scrolling fast for those of you trying to read. Just go to the show notes and look at this yourself. So we are going to go back to this other browser here. If I can find where it is. Let's show you the imaging piece first. So I'm going to show you the imaging piece right now. This is what they can do. Microwave near field imaging in real time. Microwave imaging in real time. Frequency bands from 500 megahertz, right? Ultra wideband, 500 megahertz in the millimeter wave bands. Less than or equal to 300 gigahertz. So 20 gigahertz to 30 gigahertz frequency range. There's a video here. We'll watch it in a minute. This is a body scanner, right? Airport, 40 gigahertz to 60 gigahertz. Now, when I say every line and every curve, I literally mean every line and every curve. Every line, every curve, everything about you is known. 10 gigahertz to 20 gigahertz. Just this is This is how we live now. Stuff is used for breast cancer imaging. We will look at that in detail at another time. Body scanner, through wall scanner, be able to visualize a pipe. Hands up, don't shoot. At the airport, anyway. And this is imaging of a tissue, looking at different components in a tissue. This is an interesting document, a lot of math in here, but it basically kind of breaks down how this works in a medical setting. And obviously, you know, this is what near field and far field is. We'll get into this at some other time. This is important because when we look at how to concentrate electromagnetic energy at a distant location, they can actually use something that reflects electromagnetic energy that's nearby, and it creates a near field all over again. And the electric fields and the magnetic fields in the near field are very different than the far field. And the FCC really only looks at the far field. And the whole thing about 5G is that they need a bunch of towers and a bunch of antennas up everywhere because this stuff absorbs and or reflects, which means they can turn anything basically into a resonator or a reflector. Wall, window, planter, car, doesn't matter. And that's when we start getting into some very interesting phenomena. But that's for another day. Anyway, just wanted to show you all this because this is what can be rendered. And then if they have a picture of you, or they capture you at some point with video camera, how hard is it to render something with this level of resolution? Just put skin on. Never mind the clothes, just put the skin back on. Nothing's private anymore, folks. And this is without camera. This is just with basic signal processing and some cheap, non-ionizing, quote unquote, radiation to do stuff like this. So let's go back to where we were. I think we were here. We were. So let's look at some of the fun and enjoyable things about ultra wideband.
What makes ultra-wideband unique compared to other wireless technologies is that it's a superior technology in terms of bringing the ability of spatial context to devices.
Ultra-wideband is not a new technology, but it's growing in importance now because the Internet of Things is coming up, and for portable devices you need very secure, very fast and very accurate positioning. And this is what ultra-wideband can do for us. So how does the technology work? Imagine a room with a couple of fixed ultra-wideband transceivers and you bring in a portable transceiver. This portable transceiver is sending signals, and these signals are received by the fixed transceivers. It's a very short signal pulse, only 2 nanoseconds. And what the other systems can do is they can measure the signal runtime from this portable device to the fixed devices and back. And with that, you can super accurately determine where this transmitter, the mobile one, is located in the room. This is of course opening a wealth of use cases for portable devices.
Having ultra-wideband enabled devices allows users to unlock doors when they approach them, allows users to pass through gates in transit infrastructures as they approach them. Ultra-wideband removes the last barrier in access control, providing a real hands-free experience. GPS is well known to enable device positioning for outdoor applications. Ultra-wideband extends this capability for indoor environments. Get navigated to your gate in a busy airport. Know precisely where a store is located in a busy shopping mall, or where a car is parked in a crowded lot. Device-to-device communication is another application category. Two device owners having, for instance, a phone or virtual reality glasses can locate each other and provide a new spatial context experience.
For us, ultra-wideband therefore is so uniquely suited as it can do the exact positioning, the security. It is very robust and is very, very power efficient. And this is what makes ultra-wideband such a hot thing.
Ultra-wideband's hot. Yeah, whatever. So Google, Soli, Infineon partnered together to make the Google Soli chip. So this is Infineon's 60 gigahertz radar chip, right? Enabling and revolutionizing the human-machine interface. Since first promoting our breakthrough, extensive 60 gigahertz radar chip back in 2016 at Google I/O, we have been jointly working with Google to make our bold vision a reality. In other words, to revolutionize the human-machine interface of tomorrow. Google Soli's project uses radar to enable new types of intuitive interactions. Have a look and see what radar is capable of. Let's look and see what radar is capable of.
Radar sensing revolutionizes the way we interact with the world. Your presence and movements become natural interfaces. Intuitive sensing. Touchless interaction. Radar sees through glass, plastics, and wood. It can also track human presence and moving objects. By sensing sub-millimeter motions, radar can even detect vital signs. Our sensitive radar sensors enable things to see. Part of your life, part of tomorrow. Infineon.
So we'll continue. Again, this is the cute, fluffy stuff. Why you want this, right? How radar can make your home intuitively smart.
Imagine a smart home assistant that is just waiting for you to open the door. It instantly knows that it's you and immediately adjusts lighting and heating to your comfort settings. Your smart assistant follows your movements, opening doors as if by magic, adjusting the lighting as you go, and handing over from one speaker to the next. Presence detection solutions based on sensitive radar sensors from Infineon turn your home into a smart home. They even know when you want a coffee.
Playlist on.
No need to wave your arms, authenticate yourself, or use a specific keyword with Sensitive. Your smart speaker knows it's you, responds to micro movements, and executes your every wish. Screens light up as you approach. Say goodbye to always-on displays, automatically turning off again as you walk away. Sensitive sensor solutions fit seamlessly into your lifestyle, constantly scanning your environment so they can see, hear, and sense what you do. They convert all this data from the real to the digital world, and can even predict your next move, almost with the skill and intuitive sensing capability of a human. Welcome to a smart home that makes life easier, safer, and more convenient with technology that has become second nature. Infineon Sensitive Sensors. Intuitive sensing solutions that link the real and the digital world.
You want to know how you're going to be watched and studied and monetized, folks? This is it. Beyond what's already in your consciousness. This is it. This is the next commercial step. But this isn't even the full step. This is what is blatantly obvious that they're monetizing, that they're trying to advertise and sell to you. It's far beyond this, but we're going to go one step at a time.
We live in a world full of sensory impressions and experiences, sounds, and movements. A world where technology increasingly sees, hears, and senses the same things we do. Technology that is becoming more intuitive, intelligent, and invisible as the lines between the real and digital world begin to blur. Moving into the 3D space where we control the things around us with nothing more than a gesture. Suddenly, devices seem to intuitively know what we want them to do. We no longer need to push buttons or use keywords to activate. And all of this technology integrates seamlessly into our modern lifestyles, following our movements, scanning our environment, capturing real-world happenings, and converting this data to the digital world. That makes life easier, safer, and greener. Infineon Sensitive Sensors. Intuitive sensing solutions that link the real and the digital world.
And the last one for this page, and we will move forward.
Infineon is connecting the real world to the digital world. In order to doing so, one of the fundamental problems to overcome is that you have to put sensors everywhere. In that context, Infineon is working on building the 5 human senses in the form of semiconductors, such as a smart human, a smart taste, a smart eye, a smart nose, but also smart ears. We are putting these devices into each and every kind of electronics like robots, smart speakers, or simply smartphones in order to make those devices understand what's happening in the surrounding and make them, in a more intuitive manner, interact with us as human beings.
Yeah, so there it is, right? All 5 senses. They're trying to create sensors that are able to, as best they can, replicate all 5 human senses and be able to sense the environment around the device that has these sensors embedded into it. Internet of Things, sensors in everything, up to and including things like your cell phone that are able to see, touch, taste, hear, and smell, or at least do so in a digital way in order to provide contextual awareness to the digital infrastructure, hashtag AI or cloud, to then provide a user some experience. How much data is needed? What kind of data would be extracted in order to provide an appropriate user experience? Well, that depends on the user now, doesn't it? Which means that they have to learn and understand each individual to provide the best experience for the individual. So nothing's free. And the amount of data that is going to be gathered on an individual going forward is increasing exponentially. So take it for what you want. Here is Infineon Technologies YouTube page that relates to sensors and wireless control, and they have a bunch of videos here. We might pick a few just to look at, but you could see in here a barometric pressure sensor, gesture sensor in the Pixel 4. We looked at this one earlier, revolutionary extensive radar sensor, radar chip for intuitive sensing, environmental sensor. This is linked in the show notes, so you can just literally, you can go here and click on this and start browsing. Infineon YouTube wireless sensor playlist. It's right here underneath the webpage that we just looked at. So we will move on. VIAR, an Israeli-based company, ultra-wideband imaging startup, raises $45 million, and this was back in 2017. 3D imaging radio frequency sensor company Vyar Imaging, Tel Aviv, Israel, has raised 45 mil in Series C round of financing. Now, why is this important? Well, I'll show you. Vyar's 3D ultra-wideband radio sensors provide the ability to look into and beyond solid objects and sense material composition and have multiple potential applications from health, smart home, through to autonomous driving and defense. Remember that multifunctional platform chip piece that we looked at from the ITU, right? So all of these things are potentially possible through a single chipset on a device, like your cell phone or a new cell network or a new Wi-Fi router, because the new Wi-Fi routers are 60 gigahertz. They're also backwards compatible with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. But at the 60 gigahertz range, if you look at their channels, if you start adding channels up, you get the ability to transmit 500 megahertz or more. So your 60 gigahertz new WiGig router is an ultra wideband device. Your 5 gigahertz transmitter on your router is an ultra wideband device. It's already here. It's been here for years. It's already here. So the latest round was led by Walden Riverwood, blah, 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 79 mil, blah, blah, blah. Vyar sensors create a 3D image in real time without the use of a camera. Well, we saw the naked body scanner pictures, right? 3D image, real time, down to what Google says is a 2 millimeter resolution. So it knows every line and every curve better than your spouse does. These sensors can see through solid objects, map large areas, and can be used in privacy-sensitive locations where optics cannot. Oh, how lovely. Providing a look beyond human vision, Vyar sensors have expanded across industry sectors, including smart home, automotive, retail, robotics, medical, construction, agriculture, and more. Lip Bu-Tan, chairman of Walden International and managing director of WRV, said Vyar's technology has disruptive potential across a myriad of different industries. Vyar is growing fast, and we look forward to helping Vyar impact the automotive and smart home industries in a similar way. And there's more sub-articles down here you can read on your own time. Startup utilizes ultra-wideband radar for 3D sensing. Ultra-wideband radar modules sense respiration in the next room. They can sense respiration in the next room. Respiration, your breathing rate, through a wall in the next room. And if it can measure the rise and fall of your chest to such an extent that it can calculate your respiration, what else can it see? Wonder what y'all bought on Black Friday or Cyber Monday. What are you giving your children for Christmas? Better yet, are you giving big tech access to your children this Christmas? Things that make you go, So, Vyar, different solutions, leader in 4D imaging sensors. And I want to note here, right? Here's a chip. This is an exploded version. They're not all created this way, but look. Antenna 1, antenna 2, antenna 3, antenna 4, antenna 5, all the way up to antenna 20. That's just the left side of the chip, and it's a square. And you can see 21 through antenna 40. And it says right here, our chip covers imaging and radar bands from 3 gigahertz to 81 gigahertz with up to 72 transceivers, 72 antennas that can send or receive radiation. and an integrated high-performance digital signal processor. Protecting privacy. Listen to this condescending crap. Listen to this, especially after looking at the naked body scanner pictures, that imaging quality, the 2 millimeter, every 2 millimeters is known measurement. Unlike other products that rely on cameras and optics, Vaillar's sensors don't actually collect optical data, and they say that it protects privacy at all times. Well, is that a fact? Well, just want to take you back to this over here. 40 gigahertz to 60 gigahertz, right? 40 gigahertz to 60 gigahertz. Look at the ass on that. Oh, don't even want to talk about the 10 to 20 gigahertz. That guy's carrying a gun. But hey, they're protecting your privacy, right? Because there's no camera. Let's read a little more about what these people can do. Oh, it must be safe. They look so happy. Failed to load the video. Well, that's a shame. Let's try this again. Yeah, we'll watch some Vaillar videos here in a minute. So car, home health. She's falling, but yeah, it's not loading the video. It's okay. We'll read through these real quick. Car, home health, home security, fire, homeland security, medical, retail, robotics, smart home, and smart office. Let's go to Vaillar's website and look at their playlists or their videos because they're not completely organized. So we've got, let's look at retail first. Let's look at retail. Let's see what retail says.
How well do you know your store? Retailers often lack information on their products and customers. Stores are full of unrealized sales opportunities that go unnoticed every day. So how do you find them? Vaillar's intelligent IoT sensors will tell you what's really going on. Turn your store into a smart store. Track what's happening on each shelf in real time. Map how shoppers navigate through the aisles. Identify hotspots and dead zones around the store. At the checkout, if lines are too long, automatically alert cashiers to open more registers. Vaillar's retail solution will analyze sales conversion funnels and shopper behavior. It will monitor inventory and tell you when it's time to restock. Analyze performance on the store level or compare across the organization. All of these insights are delivered through a customizable dashboard that can monitor KPIs and create benchmarks. You'll also receive real-time alerts in the palm of your hand. Best of all, no cameras are involved, so privacy isn't a concern. Vaillar sensors aren't just affordable, they'll also make you more profitable. Vaillar for retail. Know more, sell more.
Yeah, so you can see how appealing this is going to be, right? Let's look at this other one here, sensors revealed. We're going to start this video over.
I'm with Vaillar here at CES.
This year was really exciting.
Today, the world is going in the direction of connected living, smart homes, and smart vehicles. If you take our sensor into the home environment, it gets really interesting.
Our sensor detects 3 people in the living room, and it shows if they're sitting, standing, or lying down. Our sensor can cover an apartment and can monitor with a 360-degree field of view. It can track precise movements and recognizes lying down in bed, prompting the lights to dim. It can connect to Alexa and other smart devices. Here, it identifies falling and sends an alert.
Alexa, ask VR, is everyone okay?
Someone fell in the bedroom.
No cameras or pictures are taken, so it can be used in privacy-sensitive locations, like a bathroom or bedroom.
It's a really interesting product.
I was very impressed with the demonstration.
Our automotive sensor can be placed in the ceiling or dashboard. On the blue screen, you can see in real time the sensor is detecting that someone has entered the car. It can even pick up their posture or measure their activity level. It can count the number of people, tell which seat they're sitting in, and classify between a baby and an adult, replacing the need for multiple sensors. It can monitor vitals or check driver status and alert if a baby was left in a car. It can see through seats and also works in darkness and fog.
As you can see, we've been very busy and we still have a couple more surprises coming up.
Let's watch a few more. I really want to drive this point home, folks.
Hi, I'm Yael from VR Imaging. VR develops 3D imaging devices that create a 3D image of the world around you in real time, utilizing dozens of antennas on the one chip. We're setting up some demos, and we're ready to go. What you see here is location detection. Our device can even identify a person's body position or alert you if someone has fallen. It works in smoke, steam, or darkness. Unlike a camera, it doesn't take pictures and protects your privacy. It can differentiate between many people, even when close together. The device can pick up even minute changes, such as a person breathing, or two people breathing next to each other in different positions, and send an alert if someone stops breathing. What you saw here today was one device that can replace the capabilities of numerous sensors. The same device can be applied for fall detection in elderly care, for smart home security and automation, for in-car monitoring in automotive, for retail applications, and many more things that we can't even imagine. So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. So we're going to digress here for a moment, and I'm going to show you what else this stuff can do in patents held by companies that Bill Gates has, Invention Science Fund and Gearbox and others, right? So micro impulse radar, we'll get into the medical piece in a minute. Personal electronic device with a micro impulse radar. So we could just call that your modern cell phone now. And personal electronic device can be a cell phone, smartphone, personal data assistant, a pager, a tablet, computer, for example. This is held by Invention Science Fund, right? So this is Bill Gates' company, has this patent. The device can include at least one micro impulse radar. It's ultra wideband, operatively coupled to the personal electronic device, right? So embedded in a chipset that ties into the antennas, and configured to probe one or more region device. Can be operatively coupled to the personal device via an exposed interface, right? So Could be an add-on, or it could be integrated, and it could be tied into the antennas, like we just mentioned. Can be an external, so you can add one of these things like a plug into your computer, USB interface, SIM card interface, Wi-Fi interface, Bluetooth interface, Zigbee interface. And what this really means is that this patent encompasses or encapsulates a micro impulse or ultra wideband device being able to be connected to a computer, whether it be integrated in the computer in a nice sleek form factor like an iPad, a tablet, or a laptop, for example. That's one version. The other version is a piece of technology that has an antenna that's capable of emitting ultra wideband or micro impulse radar. This could be something like an alarm system. This could be something like a Ring camera system that's going to turn on and turn off based on proximity. It could be a smart connected light. It could be any number of things that are going to be sold as part of in-home, smart home automation, Alexa, Google Home, little Facebook portal, I think is what Facebook has. Those types of things. They would be able to integrate with a device that was capable of running and understanding this kind of technology. And Google actually has patents to be able to read and understand other device radar patterns or wireless transmissions and commandeer them, change their packet pulse type, their headers, and I forgot the specific terms that they use. But nonetheless, they can change the characteristics and the parameters of the training sequence for data packets of other devices. Google can take over them and use the changes as a radar. So I say this to you kind of trying to encompass as many different companies and organizations as I can to simply illustrate for you that this stuff is everywhere. Everybody gets a piece of you. Everybody gets a piece of your family. Everybody gets a piece of your emotions, your actions, your purchasing habits, your emotions, all of it. Everybody gets a piece. So, impulse radar, ultra wideband, able to measure an operating environment of the personal electronic device. It can include a step wherein one or more second sensors is operated. So this gets more complicated. So you have more than one sensor on your phone, and the radar, because it's lower power than some of the other device sensors, the radar can actually pick up movement or pick up a change in the environment and turn on things like your microphone, your camera, motion sensor, accelerometer, a magnetic field sensor, an electronic compass, a gyroscope, a gravitational field sensor, a GPS system receiver, a capacitive sensor, a micro switch, a light sensor, an infrared sensor, a radio frequency sensor, a microwave sensor, a millimeter wave sensor, or a vibration sensor. So this is the part of the phone that, you know, works in the background that you don't really have any control over. It's that kind of stuff. And it says in this patent that these things are conditional. They're contingent, such that if the radar picks up something or the radar says turn on, it has the power to do so, to control the input output, if you will, of what's going on with that device. Oh, don't worry, it gets better. So operating probe pulses, pulse radiation, are output to one or more regions located in the peripheral, right? So beyond the electronic device. The probe pulses backscatter from the probe pulses and or radiation corresponding to the probe pulses and altered by the objects in one or more regions is or are received, right? So they send out pulses of energy, wide band, and then they're reading it. They want to read back the reflection or the changes in the radiation pattern. So they know the radiation pattern that's sent out, and they read the return radiation pattern and then put it through signal processing and understand what's going on in the environment, up to and including imaging capabilities down to millimeter resolution imaging. We haven't gotten into the medical side yet, where they're able to actually go in and start understanding your organs, imaging your organs, and understanding the dielectric properties of your organs, and then potentially being able to excite tissues. We're going to get there, but we're just, one step at a time. Microimpulse radar data can include information related to one or more ranges, strength of response, the direction, the spectral characteristics, right? Frequency, polarization, amplitude, all of that, power density, it's all here. Polarization or Doppler characteristics, for example, right? The information corresponding to the logic functions can include body size, body mass, your height, your body shape, your posture, your body permittivity. This is the medical part. Your body permittivity, any articles that you're carrying, right? Spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch for you Austin Powers lovers out there. Detectable body ornamentation, characteristic movements. Oh, do you walk with a limp? Do you have swagger when you walk? Do you have a nervous twitch? These types of things can be understood and known and be uniquely assigned, uniquely known about you. And therefore, these characteristics then can define you biometrically from someone else without using a camera. Your heart rate, the intracyclic heartbeat characteristic, meaning if you have a healthy heartbeat or not. Breathing rate, a rate or magnitude of inhalation. Are you a smoker? Are you a non-smoker? Do you run? Do you exercise at all? Are you not breathing? Are you breathing heavily? Are you stressed? Did you have a bad day? Are you watching an action movie? Are you watching a Bridget Jones' Diary movie? The rate or magnitude of exhalation, the tremor of all or part of a body. Intracyclic breathing characteristics, the location of a user relative to the personal electronic device. Location of a plurality of persons, many people relative to this device. So it can track more than one person. We just saw a video that said it, so it must be true, right? Being facetious, this stuff irritates the shit out of me. Position of a plurality of persons relative to one or more regions. So it knows where it's at, and then it can understand the position of other people relative to regions within the space. So, for example, the phone is on the hallway table, but there are people commingling in the kitchen, which is one wall away. And what they're saying here is that this device is able to understand that they're in a different region in the kitchen, because it would be able to image the density and whatnot of a fridge, of a stove, and anything else, kitchen table, be able to orient all of that into a 3D spatial map, because this is a 3D sensing technology, and then be able to understand where people are in that environment, more than one person, and track them and identify them through things like their respiration and or how they move. And when we start looking at patents that discuss ultra wideband being able to have a 95+% accuracy in reading and reconstructing speech without the use of a microphone, no less, to be able to reconstruct with 95% accuracy your speech without the use of a microphone, I'm beginning to see the power of wireless technology. Let's move on. Surveillance of stress conditions using microimpulse radar. Stress conditions, you say? Okay, well, microimpulse radar can extract the signal from one or more physical or physiological attributes corresponding to a predicted human stress condition. That's interesting. Microimpulse radar, ultra-wideband, from a signal processor can include data corresponding to the location characteristic of a human physiological process, like your heartbeat or your breathing. Okay? Can be configured to determine a number of persons in the region. Yes. Can be configured to determine the size of a person and or the relative size of anatomical features of a person in can be configured to determine the presence of an animal in the region, can be configured to determine the movement or speed of movement of a person throughout the region, can determine or infer the orientation of a person, such as their direction a person is facing relative to the region, can determine one or more physiological aspects of a person. It can determine the presence of a personal appliance, such as a cell phone, PDA, etc., the presence of metallized objects, such as credit cards, smart cards, access cards. It can infer the gender and the age of one or more persons based on the return impulse radar data. For example, male bodies generally can be characterized by a higher mass density than female bodies, and thus can be characterized by somewhat greater reflectivity at a given range. Adult female bodies can exhibit relatively greater harmonic motion, the jiggle, responsive to movements, and can thus be correlated to harmonic spectra characteristics. Older persons generally move differently than younger persons, allowing an age inference to be understood based on directed movements in the region. An object such as a person in the probed region can selectively reflect, refract, or absorb, important, absorb, and or otherwise scatter these emitted pulses. This is important, the absorb part. We're going to get there as time goes on. If you want a shortcut ahead, you can go in the notes and look, but we're going to talk about thermoacoustics a great deal. I saw somebody mention something earlier about voice-to-skull technology, and we'll get there. We'll get there. It's coming. We're going to look at that because it has to do with this absorption property piece. The receive antenna and transmit antenna can be combined into a single antenna. Oh, that's good to know. So it's just a switch. It's a digital switch in your device that turns the antenna from being a transmitter to a receiver. And this switch can happen at the nanosecond time scale. At the nanosecond time scale, it can switch back and forth between being a transmitter and a receiver. All right. Voltage pulse is typically not modulated on a carrier frequency. This is impulse radar. It's sending out lots of frequencies when it's pulsing, and it doesn't have to pulse every frequency at the same time. This thing has a nanosecond level pulse, so it can pulse certain frequencies and then a nanosecond later pulse other frequencies, and it can create a little symphony, right? It doesn't have to be the same sequence every time. It can be different. And when we start looking at wave reinforcement, this is where it gets really kind of complicated. But once you understand the basic principles, you may perhaps see what I see, which is some really dangerous shit. So they can take a frequency that's offset by a very little bit and pulse it just after they have an original pulse, and do this in succession. So as these pulses move out in space, they actually reinforce each other in what they call wave interference. They have constructively interfering waves and destructively interfering waves. And constructive wave interference actually makes the waves stronger as they move away from the transmitter. And this can be done by offsetting the frequencies by just a few hertz. And if these things can pulse at the nanosecond scale, you can start exponentially increasing the amount of energy applied at distance, even if the distance is 20, 30 feet away. Because when you start looking at the technologies, the patents that discuss being able to do this stuff, like a frequency projected energy gun, that's an electromagnetic gun, basically, they say it takes a minimum of 2 frequencies, and at 2 frequencies, you can increase the energy 15 miles away, 42,000 times what the energy was when it was transmitted. And in that patent, it discusses using more than 2 frequencies. The more frequencies you use, the faster you can amplify the power. And we're talking about ultra wideband technology that uses 20% of bandwidth available to be considered or classified ultra wideband, or a minimum of 500 megahertz. That's 500 million individual frequencies. So even though it only transmits 30, 50, 100 feet efficiently, according to the usability for the transmission of data, if you're able to stack the frequencies so they can reinforce each other, you are now applying a potentially large amount of energy that could be absorbed by the body. But more on that later. Series of voltage pulses can be spaced between about 100 nanoseconds and 1,000 microseconds apart. This is just an example. Emits the voltage pulses with non-uniform spacing. This is also important because non-uniform spacing, when you start looking at Heinrich-Luz patterns that discuss magnetic fields or electric fields interfacing with the nervous system, the non-uniform spacing overrides the nervous system's ability to understand and compensate for electric field and magnetic field interactions. And we will go through Luz patents at another time. But they literally get in there and say that it has to be random pulses of energy so that it bypasses the nervous system's defense mechanisms. And I'm paraphrasing, but it literally says that in the Luz patents. You can look them up for yourself. Loos, Heinrich-Luz. Spacing between the series of voltage pulses can be varied, responsive to detection of one or more persons in the region. Yeah, I'm looking out here in chat. Yeah, look, I hope that Cyber Command is gonna do something about what we're building. I hope. But the bottom line is that we have to understand what it is so that we can demand accountability. What's the point of creating the friction and the resistance economically, commercially, and militarily, and through the intelligence communities? What's the point if the public doesn't know or the public doesn't care? We all have a part to play in figuring out what we're doing with this new technology, because if it's done right, holy shit, man, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing if it's done right. But right now, the people who have access to this stuff, to the sensor platforms on your phone, you all know who it is. The government, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Apple, the telecom industry, Microsoft, Amazon, and on and on and on. Who's your phone made by? They got access to it too. Who are the chips made by that are put in the phone? They got access to it too. So when I say we're being passed around like a whore, those of you that have been around listening to the show long enough have heard that before, some similar variation of that. It's true. It's absolutely true. So, ultra wideband radar. We've kind of been through what this stuff can do, right? It understands you. It can identify you based on your heartbeat, your respiration, the anatomical structure of your bones, your organs, whatever. It understands how you walk. It can extract your speech. I'll show you that momentarily. This is just surveillance, right? Kind of the theme for today. Understands jewelry, cell phone, glasses, including metal, any physiological information related to periodic motion. So if you wear the same wedding ring, that identifies you. If you carry the same cell phone, that identifies you. If you have the same glasses on every day, that identifies you. Wear the same necklace every day, that identifies you. The same belt every day. You kind of get the idea, right? These are imaging radar signature profiles that over a period of time create a certain degree of probability that it's you. They can do it with what you have, your possessions, or just with your body. There is no getting around it. And you can't just throw your phone away, because we all live around Wi-Fi. And you can't just get rid of your Wi-Fi because your neighbor's got Wi-Fi. And you can't just have them get rid of their Wi-Fi because you got to go out in public. And every store now has Wi-Fi. And you have commercial cell networks. This stuff works through everything. Satellites, TV, AM, FM broadcast. The resolution is different, obviously. But the radar capabilities are there. The question is, what is the sophistication of the software and the algorithms? What is the sophistication of their signal processing? What is the sophistication of their transmission and receiving characteristics? That's it. The better they get, the higher the resolution, the more accurate the picture is painted with a lesser amount of bandwidth. So we're far along. We're far along in this journey here. Let's look at ultra wideband radar in medicine. We have a half an hour left. I'm going to read this. Some of it will be a little technical, but bear with me. You gotta know you gotta know what you're bringing in your house, man. This stuff's going around your kids. It's going around your spouse. And really sick fucks have access to this stuff. So, you know. So here we go. A review is given of present state of the art and likely to be developed or futuristic biomedical applications of ultra wideband radar. Ultra wideband radar is something like a mix of conventional radar, radio detection and ranging, that's what it stands for, that technology, and spread spectrum radio technology, both directly coming from military applications. It's now been commercialized and miniaturized to the tune that it's going into every mobile device to start rolling out this smart grid, smart home, Internet of Things environment. What renders ultra wideband radar very much interesting is the possibility to probe the motion of internal organs of the human body with a remote, non-contact approach, which is unique at the present time. Remote, no contact imaging of internal organs of the human body. The very low cost and high miniaturization capability and the environmental friendliness due to the very low electromagnetic energy emissions are other aspects of specific interest. A review of the biomedical applications known at the present is presented based on the published documents and information derived from the websites of institutions carrying on this research. Just a paper only appears to have been published about the applications of ultra-wideband radar to actual medical problems, although many papers on the interaction of radio frequency energy with living tissues and safety issues can be found in the literature. So yeah, there's all kinds of information out there of what radio frequency does to the body. And I'll show you patents that will freak you out, like pulsed electromagnetic radiation to induce or prevent a cytokine reaction, a cytokine storm, or pulsed electromagnetic radiation to activate or inactivate DNA or RNA to get it to grow or to not grow, or to regrow bone, tissue, cartilage, connective tissues, those kinds of things. We'll look at all of that with pulsed electromagnetic radiation, frequency and resonance specific, ion cyclotron resonance, which has to do with being able to heal or hurt or read what's going on in the body, all based on frequency and resonance. And this is the real underlying power of ultra wideband, especially when you can scale between 1 and 300 gigahertz like Google Soli, which is just one of many. We've looked at a few tonight. An original and very simple model of ultra-wideband radar pulse echo interaction with the human thorax, chest, right, is presented to show the feasibility of a real heart motion probe. ultra-wideband radar technology, which is quite unknown at the present time to the general public and physicians as well, is about to strongly impact in everyday life and in the medical field as well, making it possible to design a novel kind of non-invasive measurement and monitoring device. Here we go. The overall conceptual working model of ultra-wideband radar system resembles that of ultrasonic echo transducers used in many applications, from autofocus cameras to proximity and range detectors. The main and fundamental difference being that, on the contrary to ultrasounds, electromagnetic pulses propagate through walls, ground, ice, mud, concrete, and the human body. Although many researchers around have been working on ultra-wideband technology for many years, a great concern on ultra-wideband radar arose in 1993 when it's reported that a Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory engineer, Thomas McEwen, discovered a possibly new and original implementation of ultra-wideband radar. While working on a new high-speed, low-cost sampler for pulse laser research, McEwen developed a system which was called micro-impulse radar. Micro-power impulse radar, in this case. The patents on micro-power impulse radar technology describe a wonderful spectrum of applications coming from the low-cost MIR technology, from plastic-bodied mine detection to remote vital sign monitoring to a 3D radar camera, Of course, the ultimate application being the futuristic X-ray specs, until now, just science fiction. As a matter of fact, the United States Patents and Trademark Office has recently rejected a few key claims of the MIR radar patent. These claims were ruled as anticipated, meaning a previously claimed patent by Fullerton in 1987, whose assignee at the time was Time Domain Corporation, Huntsville, Alabama, already had patented the anticipated implications for what this was back in 1987. Back in 1987. That's a lot of years ago, folks. Whatever should be the story regarding the intellectual property of the system, we are now interested, from the scientific point of view, on the biomedical applications of ultra-wideband radar, which are yet need a lot of research to get a viable clinical-oriented device. The rationale for biomedical applications. Electromagnetic pulses coming from ultra-wideband radar are able to probe the human body. In an application developed at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, an ultra-wideband radar was able to detect non-invasively the movements of the heart wall. This is because there do exist a definite difference in the reflection magnitude between the heart muscle and the blood it pushes into the vascular tree. In the two patents awarded to McEwen on medical ultra-wideband radar, a rough description of the physical principle of the operation is given. As the impedance of the cardiac muscle is in the order of 60 ohms and the impedance of the blood is about 50 ohms, it can be expected a roughly 10% reflection magnitude of the radio frequency energy at the heart muscle blood boundary. What does this mean? This means that it is taking the reflection components of sending radiation into your body and reading it as it bounces back and being able to develop electrophysiological profiles that can then be compared and contrasted in a database to render an image of your heart and potentially your blood pumping through your body. According to McEwen's patent, the permeability and permittivity of the vacuum, the impedance of the heart muscle, blah, 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 blah. The reflection coefficient defined here, given a 9.9% return fraction of the radiated pulse. So this is just math that basically lines out technically what I just said. Can understand the difference between heart and blood, the boundary within that, based on electrical conductivity, the dielectric components and the permittivity components of the different systems, blood and heart muscle in this case. And you can go to the FCC's website and they've got the dielectric and permittivity components for every major organ. And I'll show you, it's right here. This is what they're talking about, taking this stuff and doing basic math out of it. So we'll do 1900 megahertz, which is 1.9 gig. And here it is. The following tissue dielectric parameters are computed according to the Four-Cole model standard compilation of the dielectric properties of body tissues at radio frequency and microwave frequencies. Tissue, bladder, blood, bone, cartilage, cerebellum, cornea, eye, heart, gray matter, liver, lung. It's all here. It's in the notes if you want to mess around with this, but let's get back to reading this document. This is what they're talking about. They're able to take these figures, if you will. These are generalizations, right? So you can do your own measurements. I'm sure people have and that are doing these experiments, especially something like Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, right? And they can come up with these figures. The same rule should be applied for the reflection at the air-chest interface or the chest-lung interface. So it's this transition from one medium to the next, skin to fat, fat to bone, fat to muscle, muscle to bone, muscle to fat, blood, organ transitions, all of it. That's what they're talking about, being able to understand those gradients, those variations. And there are patents we'll go over that talk about time gating, so they can actually zero in on a particular location in the body based on what they call time gating, where they can actually pick the reflections out from all of the reflections based on their time of flight to zero in and process only a particular piece of the body. And they can image the whole body and then just focus in on the reflections that they want through time gating. But that's for another day. So the model proposed in the patents 1 and 2 is quite ingenious, as it does not account for the various living tissues which the incoming pulse has to travel before reaching the useful echo surface on the heart wall. At the Tor Vertical University of Rome, Italy, we have recently studied a little more accurate model which considers thickness, impedance, linear attenuation, and wave speed of 6 superimposed living tissues to be found by the ultra-wideband pulse while traveling through the human thorax from the skin to the heart. The model is based on data table 1 obtained from the Visible Human Project and the Gabriel's data book of dielectric properties of tissues. And here it is. Impedance, attenuation, speed and thickness of air, fat, muscle, cartilage, lung, and heart. Electromagnetic and anatomical properties of tissue layers in the thorax. The data allowed for the computation of echo time delay, along with the linear attenuation and reflection coefficient at its boundaries. So here it is. Pulse, echo. And it's able to understand the handoffs, the transitions between these different tissue properties. Although it seems more accurate from a physical standpoint, the new model of pulse echo behavior in the thorax is all but correct at all. As the dielectric properties used were those measured on actual living tissues using continuous wave at 1500 megahertz, that's 1.5 gigahertz, the model remains intrinsically wrong. Indeed, for an effective model to be developed, we need ultra-wideband dielectric properties, not narrowband. Although in the microwave region, this means that a convolution method or a finite differences time domain technique, here we go, like that already employed in ultra-wideband antenna calculation should be used. I think this is that time gating thing I was telling you about. Also, both the real part and the imaginary one of the reflection coefficients at the boundary should be considered. This is because the ultra-wideband receiving correlator working in the time domain is, by design, strongly sensitive to phase errors. Don't get discouraged if you don't understand all this. It's not a huge deal to understand every single word. Another point to be addressed is that the receiving correlator itself, we need to assess what amount is actually phase sensitive. So this is a little better diagram. Model predicted attenuation of pulse echo intensity traveling from a transmitting antenna to a receiving antenna. Each step accounts for the echo at the boundary, decreasing the curve accounts for linear attenuation. So this looks a little more step graded. It looks like this when it's in air. It changes transition medium into skin. It looks like this. It transitions to fat. And it looks like this and into muscle and the cartilage, the lung, or the heart. In a nutshell, we know that the heart motion related to signal is obtained out of a radar ultra-wideband radar device aimed at the thorax, the chest. What are we actually measuring? To what extent correlator performances, pulse shape, tissue properties affect the intensity and morphology, unique characteristics of the recovered signal? So as the signal's transmitted, you know what you transmit, and it's going to change and interact with the different tissues as it's being transmitted into the body, and then it's going to be reflected back. And those reflections are going to have a different characteristic than what was originally transmitted. That's what they're talking about. It's changing the properties of intensity, right? And the morphology, what the waveform actually looks like when the signal's recovered. So you have a known start and you have a measured response. You put it through a signal processor and you can create an image out of it, a high resolution image out of it. The problems ask for some clear answers to reach an adequate physical understanding of the medical ultra-wideband radar and subsequent clinical viability and acceptability of the technique. Is it viable and acceptable? Meaning, does it meet a certain caliber, a certain level, a certain standard of imaging? Something like CT, MRI, CAT scan, right? I think that's CT. Anyway, accurate modeling of the phenomena with the correct and extended electromagnetic measures should help advancement of science in this field. This evidence opens up a whole new area for non-invasive measures and monitoring of human body functions. In practice, any object of adequate size can be monitored. Listen carefully. Vocal cords can be monitored. Vessels, like blood vessels, can be monitored. Your bowels, heart, lung, chest, bladder, a fetus. They're all good candidates for ultra-wideband radar probing. Well, that means that Google and Apple and Facebook and Twitter and everybody else knows how your pregnancy's going with your new phone now, don't they? They're also going to know if you're menstruating. They're also going to know if you ate red meat, for example. They're going to be able to understand your blood pressure and your heart health. And they're going to be able to extract and understand your speech. Anyway, as a matter of fact, radar monitoring of human physiologic functions was considered as early as the 70s. But any further development was impeded by the cumbersome and expensive technology of those times. We did not have material science efficient and improved and evolved enough to deploy ultra-wideband sensors into everybody's home, but we do now. So they had these ideas back in the 70s, and they just needed technology to catch up in these other fields. Signal processing, AI, machine learning, material science, miniaturization, manufacturing, in order to make it cheap enough to deploy. All of these things needed to converge at the right sweet spot to be able to do this. And they had this notion in the 70s. So this document says. But as long as the human body monitoring is concerned, it has to be recognized that no other present time technology is using the same physical principle as ultra-wideband radar does. Furthermore, no other system or methodology lets one monitor the movements of internal organs without direct skin contact. I'll say that again. Ultra-wideband technology is unique in that it lets one monitor the movements of internal organs without direct skin contact. Even using radiated instead of induced electromagnetic fields. The implications are going to be staggering with what's going to be available with medicine, folks. Diagnostics and potential therapy from something like your cell phone, if this is done right. You go to a little pouch for your phone. It's an ACE bandage. You wrap it around your body where after you've been imaged, and it provides electromagnetic therapy to do things like treat a tumor overnight while you go to sleep with such a low level of radiation over an 8-hour period instead of a highly aggressive amount of radiation over like an hour-long therapy at the radiologist in the oncology department. The implications are going to be phenomenal if we don't fuck this up. So functional magnetic resonance imaging is actually providing images of moving internal organs, but this is fMRI. As it uses an induced field, the patient has to be confined in a space, right? Ultra-wideband radar using radiated fields lets the patient be absolutely free in space. This stuff can image. They're comparing and contrasting an fMRI with ultra-wideband, and ultra-wideband lets you move around freely, and it can provide imaging quality. But they're comparing and contrasting in this statement with fMRI. Just want to make sure that's clear. No other direct comparison is to be made between ultra-wideband radar and fMRI, as the purpose and final clinical target of the two methodologies are far too different. The somewhat magic performance of ultra-wideband radar technology might be summarized in a futuristic ultrasound-like apparatus, able to gather images or at least scalar measures or simple monitoring of internal organs of the human body without direct skin contact nor precise positioning. New systems could be able to even work through clothes or blankets and at a distance up to 10 or more feet away. 10 or more feet away. Imaging through your clothes with ultra-wideband radar up to 10 or more feet away. With proper research and funding, this scenario is probably just 5 years away. This document was, I don't know when it was some time ago. Let's see if it tells us. March 2017 is when this was uploaded. So we can go with that. Oh, excuse me. This was back in 2002. So we're well within the timeline here. That was 2002 when this thing was conceived. So 10 years or more would be 2012. Oh, excuse me, 10 or more feet. Many medical applications. There it is, 5 years away. So 2007 is what they were projecting, that remote distance ultra-wideband radar imaging capabilities were going to be possible. Written in 2002, 5 years later, 2007. We're now in 2020. Almost 2021. Many medical applications of this new technology are about to be developed in the near future. Provided a large research work be done from the engineering and medical point of view. Due to the extremely high and profitable industrial interest, this field of research is expected to have a huge funding both from governmental agencies and private companies. Biomedical applications of ultra-wideband radar. By using a particular non-resonating antenna, right, to avoid ringing, so like a flat antenna. The MIR was operated as a cardiovascular monitor to detect cardiac contractions, arterial wall motion, breath monitor to detect respiratory movements. Furthermore, MIR system, ultra-wideband, used as electromagnetic sensors, are experimented for assessing vocal cord activity and speech parameters. The use of ultra-wideband radar in cardiac motion evaluation is a wonderful complement of the electrocardiogram as a cause-effect pair. More interesting to physicians would be the relationship between ultra-wideband radar heart tracings and what MDs already know very well, the M-mode echocardiogram, which uses ultrasounds. As the ultra-wideband electromagnetic signal is not influenced by clothes or blankets, and the useful range is in the order of a few meters, and through clothing heart rate monitoring is viable, so that interesting potential applications can be envisioned. Home healthcare, emergency rooms, intensive care units, hospitals, pediatric clinics, alerts from the sudden infant death syndrome, rescue operations, to look for someone's heart beating under ruins or soil or snow, or law enforcement are just some potential areas of the application. Keep in mind, this is back in 2002. What kind of cell phone did you have in 2002? Wasn't what we have today now, was it? Tracing of arterial pulsation. Oh, the tracing of arteries, pulsing arteries have been obtained. This is an area of research deserving further attention, as the arterial wall motion is related to the internal pulse pressure, and arterial pulse pressure monitor should be obtained. By monitoring pressure pulse on two different sections of an artery, a pulse pressure speed can be obtained. Please note this pulse pressure speed is much higher than actual blood speed into the vessel. It is already known that blood pulse pressure speed is directly related to the vessel wall viscoelastic properties. A non-contact, non-invasive method for this measurement would be a real breakthrough as a diagnostic tool for arterial diseases such as arteriosclerosis. A really sound application of ultra-wideband radar in the medical field is that depicted in figure 8. That's down here, right here, figure 8. It's going to study your baby. Ultra-wideband radar emissions are safe, sure, and therefore the system is well suited for a chronically positioned equipment to monitor the last period of pregnancy or to assist in evaluating labor. The obstetric ultra-wideband radar would require proper microprocessor control of range gating. We'll get into this a little bit later, range gating, and a quite accurate signal processing to extract the various data out of the echo signal. Well, I'll just say this about that. If the Google Soli can understand you metaphorically rolling a Q-tip between your fingers to change the volume of something, don't you think that that same chip is going to be able to determine if you're pregnant, right? Your baby, the orientation of your baby, the heartbeat of your baby, the blood around your placenta, your heartbeat, be able to understand all those things all at the same time. If it's able to pick up this nice, subtle, gentle motion of you rolling a Q-tip between your fingers to turn up or turn down the volume on your smart connected alarm clock, I think so. Bear in mind, this was written back in 2002. Ultra-wideband radar could replace presently used fetal monitors, which use ultrasound to detect placentary blood flow, the pressure sensors to detect uterine contractions. The ultra-wideband radar signal contains data about maternal heart rate, maternal breath rate, fetal heart rate, fetal movements, uterine contractions as well. Furthermore, the remote non-contact, non-invasive operation permits conventional, uninterrupted mother and child care. Speech assessment and monitoring of living structures involved in the phonation has been recently addressed by some researchers at Lawrence Livermore Labs, where a radar microphone was developed. I'll show you that on the next show. At the University of California, Davis, and at the University of Iowa, work is in progress toward a better understanding on how humans produce speech. Furthermore, information has been gathered for speech recognition, speaker verification, and speech synthesis. Probably from the technical standpoint, the most interesting feature of this device lies in its very low cost and ease of production. Even if this system mainly works in the microwave region, it can be built from off-the-shelf electronic components at no particular adjusting or special cavities or strip lines. None of this stuff is needed. A breadboard, amateur version working somewhere around 800 megahertz was developed. This is crazy. The only critical component being the antenna, which for many practical applications has to be a non-resonating antenna. In general, a quite complex problem. Of course, as you may imagine, no resonant circuits should be included in an ultra-wideband system. So they made an ultra-wideband sensor with like Radio Shack stuff. Low-end consumer products based on ultra-wideband radar technology could reach as low as a couple of US dollars in the near future. Well, now they're coming out in all kinds of medical devices. For biomedical applications, a couple of watt peak power pulses suffice, considering very low duty cycle. The mean emitted power is on the orders of tens of microwatts. This power level is so weak as to be considered intrinsically safe for humans. As a consequence, no harm will derive to patient, even in chronically operated monitoring. It's on all the time, right? It's not going to hurt you. Sure. Many studies have already been published regarding the effects of animal-human exposure to ultra-wideband radar emissions, and there are citations. Furthermore, battery-operated devices are expected to have a huge working time between battery replacements. And so an optical ultra wideband radar. This gets into laser diodes and stuff, which is kind of similar to what's going on with Face ID, where you've got the different dots that are projected on your face and in the environment, and then a flood illuminator, infrared, and then you've got a photodiode that picks all that up and it's able to understand you versus anybody else. Well, they're talking about making an optical ultra wideband radar. And I'm willing to bet that thing on your damn iPhone and on any new modern smartphone probably can do exactly what this thing's saying. But we're going to stop now because we are out of time. And with that, I will say good night.